You sound excited.
Yeah.
You sound like you don't hate them anymore. You sound like you're like, oh my gosh, they did what they have to do. They were a fully functioning, modern, on it, demanding NFL franchise with a vision and a plan and a formula to try to get out of this hell that they have been in since the end of the Bill O'Brien era and Jack Easterby and Deshaun Watson. I can hear it in your voice. So I don't even need to say anything. I can listen to Clanton on 790. That tells me what a franchise changer this is. And it really, really is. Now, look, I just filed an early blog at HoustonChronicle.com. I'm already getting questions. I know X's and Clanton is. I'm sure, who's the offensive coordinator be and how, who are they going to take? Like, we'll get to all that. I don't know how many games they're going to win. This might take a couple years. But I truly believe, and Wex and Clanton, you guys date me, more in Houston. But I really think, I guess you'd have to go back to the Deshaun Watson pick. But even that was still a Bill O'Brien team, and things have been so just divided on Kirby with, the GMs and the power and, the end of the Rick Smith era. I really think you have to go back to 2011 and 12, and 12 was my first year here when the Texans owned this city, when it felt like this, because that went into O'Brien, and while O'Brien did some very good things and was a solid coach, it ended horribly. He was his own worst enemy, et cetera, et cetera. And look, guys, the last 2.5 years, 3 years, there's no way around it. They have just been horrible, and this ends all that. This is a head coach that other teams wanted. This is a head coach that the morning before Lovie Smith coached his last game and blew the number one pick, you were hearing erroneously being reported by, I don't know who the hell reported it, but that DeMeco Ryans wouldn't even consider the Houston Texans, which now looks like the dumbest report I've ever seen in my life. The fact that the Houston Texans got DeMeco Ryans, and it looks like Denver is going to have to settle on Sean Payton, and they have
delicious.
Russell Wilson at quarterback, is just unbelievable. Don't know how many games he's going to win. It might take some time. But everything that you and I and Wex and everyone on this station have been talking about for years, every time that they got it wrong, they clearly on this day, without question, got this right. When's the last time I or you, Clanton, could say that about the Houston Texans?
It's definitely been a while. Both of you guys brought up that same point in time, potentially, as the acquisition on draft night of Deshaun Watson for some time ago. But to the where they reached today, the only way this happens is if the other side is a willing party. The Texans, Cal, Nick, they can want DeMeco all they want. They can overpay him all they want. He still doesn't have to accept. He did accept. Not knowing definitively, but what are some of the things that make you believe he wanted to coach here, wanted to be back in the Texans building, wanted to be the guy, I guess, to bring this franchise back to some form of respectability, competitiveness that they really haven't known essentially since, either his era or the brief Deshaun Watson, Bill O'Brien era?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wex, and I'm going to get into this as soon as I get off the phone and start updating my Houston Chronicle blog, but I've already tweeted some of this stuff. Look, last year during training camp, and I will admit right now that it looks silly now because it did not work out. But last year I had people within the Texans telling me, they were insistent that, hey, stick with us, things are changing. And I think that they were able to change, the media side first, right? Because it was as bad as it's ever been with Jack Easterby and the end of Bill O'Brien. But much of that had O'Brien's handprints, but most of that was Easterby. And you would hear, from 1% of Twitter, oh, why are we still talking about Easterby? He's not doing anything. No, he was. He was in the middle of the last head coaching search. The reason that they finally ended up with Lovie Smith partly was the Brian Flores racial discrimination lawsuit, but most of that was that just idiotic pursuit of Josh McCown when he had less experience than Jeff Saturday. And that so much was Easterby's imprints. And so, we're going to look back if this all works out, and it's a big if. They got to win games. You got Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and a long way to go. DeMeco Ryans, huge congratulations. And now it's like, all right, put your staff together and get to work. But he's going to get a few years. We all know that. And if this all works out, the key date will be October of 2022 when Jack Easterby was finally fired, because that is what I was told last year. And I wrote this a couple weeks ago in the Chronicle, that I was still hearing that things really were changing. They were changing on the inside. And so, you have to get the quarterback right. You have to get the head coach right. You have to get the offense going, on and on and on. But they finally have some pieces. They're through the end of the Deshaun Watson just disaster of an era. I don't know if an era's ever ended worse with an NFL team than it did with Deshaun Watson and the Texans, when just a few years prior he was the hope of the franchise. And you get rid of Jack Easterby, and all of a sudden things just start to open up, Wex, because you have salary cap space, you have draft picks, you have Dameon Pierce and Jalen Petrie and Derek Stingley and some young talent. You have a general manager who does unquestionably know the league and knows the draft. And you put all that together with DeMeco Ryans, who could be the most exciting, young, energetic head coach in the NFL. Mike McDaniel's already old news. This is DeMeco Ryans right now. And then you have the local factor, the fact that all the long-term Texans fans, the people who have been with this team since the start, they'll point to that, 2010, 11, which obviously funneled into 2012. That's the peak of the franchise right now. That's when things felt and looked the best. And DeMeco Ryans was a part of that, so he knows what this team meant to the city, can still mean to the city. And I don't want to get too excited, but this is a fact that for as much as the Astros have done, and it's been amazing. No, I'm not saying anything about the Houston Astros, but this is Texas. This is a football city. This is a football state. This is a state where peewee and high school football is as important as politics. And will the Texans ever be the Cowboys nationally? No, but my God, they have fell so low, and they were so high just a decade ago. And DeMeco Ryans knows what it was like in this city and what it should be like, and they're hiring him to eventually get them back to that point and then take them higher.
Brian T. Smith of the Houston Chronicle joining us here on a day that it is official, by the way, in case you were wondering. The Houston Texans have actually tweeted out a graphic saying, "Welcome home, DeMeco Ryans." I just want to remind everybody how close, because we're talking about all the good vibes, and it is good, and I love it. I mean, it is the most excited I've been about the Texans in probably like 3 full seasons, if not longer. They were this close to hiring Josh McCown. To come from that to this.
And he would still be here. He would still be here. He would have at least gotten 2 or 3 years, Clanton. It's a great point, and that's why I know some people don't want to hear Easterby's name, but ever again, just like Deshaun Watson, but that's the connecting line here, that they had to get rid of that era to get to this point. And look, I may have taken I'm sure Clanton has taken more shots at Cal McNair, but I've written a lot about Cal, and he's deserved it all. And I think he knows it at the core. The McNairs had to wake up. And I think Hannah McNair and her rise in the organization and being more and more, public and having more of a say, that's not a coincidence. But if DeMeco Ryans, who could have gone to Denver and been with the Walton family and Walmart and Russell Wilson, if he believed that his first head coaching job with the Texans was his best opportunity, that tells you that they're starting to figure it out, and they're committed, and they want to get this right. And that's a very, very telling sign that DeMeco Ryans believed in these Texans, not the 2010-11, this version of the Texans, that the McNairs are starting to seemingly figure this out and be more committed, want the Texans to represent something truly positive for the city of Houston.
In part, DeMeco has said in a statement, being the head coach of the Houston Texans is my dream job, and my family is thrilled to be back in H-Town. And this is kind of what I figured might be, for the first time ever, seemingly something in the Texans' favor. And that was someone who wanted to be here, and he has a very good reason. A family standpoint, obviously his football career standpoint. I guess as we wrap this conversation up with you, the next step, what's the next thing the next piece of good news that you think we'll hear regarding DeMeco, the Texans, in the future?
Yeah, I just like everybody else, and I heard this a lot on radio today, and I was getting emails already, and I jokingly had it as the first line in my column in today's newspaper, which is already old news. But who's his offensive coordinator going to be? Because that's the big thing, right? I mean, he knows defense. I mean, I guess you hire a DC if you want, and he oversees everything. He'll figure that out, obviously. But that's going to be the next step, because we can talk DeMeco and defense and changing the franchise and McNairs and all those things, and that will carry us. But it's Senior Bowl time already. We're not that far from the draft. And look, let's just live in reality. This is an NFL that is every year more and more. I don't care how good your defense is. It's defined by your offense, and it's defined by offensive wizardry and quarterbacks and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs are on the verge of turning into the modern NFL version of the Golden State Warriors with Patrick Mahomes. So you want to figure out who is his coordinator going to be, and then we'll get closer and closer to the number 2 pick, and that'll be interesting to watch that play out, right? Nick Caserio, who's been there for a while, has had some hits, has had some misses. Who do they want to be that number 1 pick, to be their quarterback? I have a very hard time believing that DeMeco Ryans took this job, said it was his dream job, and he wants Davis Mills as his quarterback next year. Nothing about that makes sense. So he knows what it takes to win in this league. He was designing defenses daily for 17 games a year and huge playoff games. He's played it, he's coached it, he knows. Finding out what his offense is going to be like, that'll be the next really, really interesting part about this. But guys, I love it. I've said it before. I've been so tired of having to just critically, analytically shred and rip and destroy the Texans because they have deserved it. But we all do it out of love. We want them to get back to where they were, to be better than they've ever been by far. And they finally got it right today. And this is a shot in the arm that they've needed for a decade. Great stuff. Really appreciate you joining us on short notice. Know you got more stuff to get out to all of your Chronicle readers and followers at Cron Brian Smith. Brian T. Smith joining us here on the A-Team. The Texans have hired a head coach. His name is DeMeco Ryans. Appreciate it, Brian. Guys, I appreciate you having me on. Take care. Thank you. 2 players from Alabama added in last year's draft. 1 player from Alabama added so far this offseason. His name is DeMeco Ryans. Will they add another at pick number 2 on draft night, April 27th?
Yeah, I want to talk about that, but I also want to get to you guys. I know some of you have been waiting patiently at 713-212-5790. When we come back, we'll get your reaction to DeMeco Ryans being named the 6th head coach in Houston Texans history.
Clutch City.
It's a Clutch City comeback.
You've got 9 chances a day to clutch $1,000. So grab that keyword at the top of the hour from 9 to 5.